on November 19th, 2025. This meeting is being recorded and all members of the select board are present. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey, number two, is there anybody online or in person that would like to address the board under citizen statements and petitions? Seeing as there is none, I'm going to move on to number 4, which is community events and announcements. And we'll come back to 3 in just a few minutes. The Brothers of the Brush are going to be hosting the annual Santa Parade on December 5th. I see that's not a separate item, but it does say request. So are they gonna, is that their official?
Yeah.
All right.
Request.
That is their official. Oh, I see. John, how's it going? So Jonathan Dudley is here representing the Brothers of the Brush, and they're looking to get approval to host the annual Santa Parade on December 5th. John.
Correct. Welcome. Thank you, guys. Yeah, so we're looking to get permission to host the Santa Parade December 5th, same time as last year. Festivities will start at Founders Park at 6 o'clock. The parade should arrive at Founders Park around 7, and then there will be a fireworks display, and Santa will be present for the little ones.
Sounds great. Sounds awesome. We are always appreciative. This event has become an actual annual event, and it's a big add to the town. So I'd be looking for a motion to approve the permission.
Move to approve permission for the Brothers of the Brush to host an annual Santa Parade on December 5th. At Founders Park on December 5th, with the event starting at 6 p.m. Parade to begin at 7 p.m.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those against? All right. Motion passes. John, thank you very much. We'll see you all at Founders Park on December 5th, and looking forward to seeing Santa come to Mendon.
Look forward to it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, number 6, meeting minutes for approval. I'd be looking to get a motion to approve or decline the meeting minutes for on October 15th and October 29th, 2025.
I move to approve the meeting minutes for October 15th and October 29th, 2025.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? All right, motion passes. Number 7 in your packet for a review for next time is the meeting minutes for November 5th, 2025. And as always, get your input back to Katie before the next meeting.
I'm going to test Jeremy, see if he can do the TA report in 2 minutes or less.
No, I don't think you can. So, we'll have 1 minute before we have to open the public hearing with the Board of Assessors, who I see here. One member. So, all right. What else do we have coming up? Katie, what is the date of the holiday party?
It's going to be December 19th from 5:30 to 8:30 at Willowbrook.
All right. So we'll have more details on that to come. The holiday party is something we've been throwing every year for the boards and committees and staff and the town as a whole to just show our appreciation. And this year it's going to be at Willowbrook on December 19th, 1 month from now. Excellent.
Thanks.
All right. In 10 seconds, with bated breath, I'm going to open a public hearing. All right, so it's 6:35 and I'm going to open the public hearing for tax classification. So the Mendon Select Board and Board of Assessors are holding this public hearing on property tax classification, November 19th, 2025 at 6:35 p.m. And this is a hybrid meeting. You can attend online or in person, and we're going to have a policy discussion. And I just got the actual red part. I think I got most of it. There will be several policy discussion alternatives discussed by those present before the select board to determine the guidelines to be established for allocating the percentage of the tax burden for residential, commercial, and industrial and personal property. So I'm putting forward a motion to open the 6:35 public hearing.
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Second.
Sorry, my bad. That went opposite. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is it-
All those
is it-
against?
Does it need to be roll call? Not for this?
Not
No,
Okay.
not to
Okay,
open.
then aye.
Thank you. All right, so, principal assessor.
Yes, thank you. This is our yearly classification hearing for the board to vote on whether or not to split the tax rate, whether or not to accept a residential, small commercial, or open space exemption. It is governed under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 56. And I just have a little bit of information up on here that the classification, it does not determine the tax rate for the town. That's done through the gateway with the information that's put in from the town accountant, treasurer collector, votes from town meeting, all of that. It also does not determine how much money can be raised. If the board were to vote for a split tax rate, it does not increase the revenue of the town. And the tax levy is actually determined by the Mendon residents with what they vote on at town meeting for budget. The effects of the 4 votes that the board will be asked to take tonight is the residential factor. This shifts the tax burden between the residential and commercial industrial properties. Such as the board has standardly voted on a factor of 1, which means it's a single tax rate for the town. If the board so voted to do some sort of a factor, such as if you decided to do a 1.25 factor, this would change the tax rate, which looks like right now it's coming out at $13.40 with the information that's in on Gateway right now. It would change it to $13.09 for residential and $16.75 for commercial.
That's just for
properties.
the public, that's
That's
per
just-
$1,000.
Per 1,000, yes. The open space discount, this shifts the burden from residential to open space. We don't have any properties that are classified as open space. The residential exemption, this you see more so on communities that have summer homes, like the Cape, they have a residential exemption that it shifts the burden to the properties that are not owner occupied on a year-round basis. So those residents get a little bit more of a break on their taxes, whereas the people that own the summer cottages have this slightly higher tax rate. And the small commercial exemption, this is done within the commercial and industrial discount for for qualifying commercial properties. They have to have a minimum of, I believe it's 10 employees or in there. And if the properties, if they've got commercial properties that are being rented out or leased out, it's the owner of the property that gets the tax break, which doesn't filter down to the people that are renting or leasing the properties within that specific parcel. The next slide is just informational. It just shows the breakdown of how the town is made up. It's primarily a residential community with almost 89% being residential. And you have a little over 6.5% on the commercial, not even 0.5% on industrial, and personal property is a little over 4%, makes up the tax base. This next one is showing how the tax rate is being broken down. Right now, as I said, it's looking at about $13.40. Now, with the senior means exemption that we offer, the residential rate does go up to $13.51 because that exemption is carried over across the board for the residential properties to make up the difference that we're the exemption that's being given to those individuals that applied and have been awarded that exemption. So, as I said, so the residential rate would jump about 11 cents to $13.51 per thousand. The commercial industrial personal property tax rate would be $13.40 per thousand. This equates the average assessed value for properties in the town. Residential, $664,496. So that equates to about a little over $73 per year added onto the tax bill. The CPA increases by $1.86. Next slide is just showing what the average values are. As you can see, the commercial industrial had a big jump this year. That's primarily because of the storage units over on Milford Street and the new warehouse on Cape Road. Those both hit the values for this year for the first time. So we saw a large increase on the commercial industrial values as a result of those two properties. And then as far as what the average tax bill comes out to be, as you can see, it's going from $85.38 to approximately $89.77 for residential property. The increase in the CPA from $215.98 to $229.23. And the commercial industrial properties, it's almost a $3,000 difference between FY25 and to FY26 for the increase in the tax dollars. And these are all based on what the numbers are right now. Final certification from DLS will, the tax rate could change once they look at everything, but right now these are the tax rates that it appears that we'll be looking at for this year. So in closing, split tax rate, it can discourage businesses from coming into town, and I know we're trying to get more businesses to say, hey, Mendon, let's go. But it also affects, a split tax rate will also affect all of your chapter land properties. So your small farms would be hit with the higher tax rate if the tax rate was split. And historically, the town has had a single tax rate. It was also has not accepted the residential exemption, small commercial exemption, and as I said, the open space exemption. We don't have any properties that are classified under open space, so historically, the board has voted not to accept that exemption as well. So the 4 votes that the board would be taking would be the residential factor, which the Board of Assessors recommend voting as 1, which means that it's a single tax rate. They also recommend not accepting the open space residential or the small commercial exemption.
All right,
So,
nice and clear.
yeah.
Board, do you have any questions?
One question, just regarding the open space exemption. You said that there's no parcels that are classified as open space. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit? What was that?
This is kind of a defunct classification. Years ago, you may have had large parcels of land that, maybe they were just not used for farming or anything like that. And the assessors could code those out on a 200 code, which is open space. As I said, it's really not a coding that is used frequently. You may see it out in the western part of the state, where people have larger parcels of land. But generally down in this area, the 200 codes are not actively used for the open space, because it's just either they're under chapter land or they've got a dwelling on them.
Makes sense. Thank you.
An open space owned by the town is not subject to that. So there's plenty of open space in town.
That's.
Right.
Yes. Not privately.
privately.
All right. Great. Let me. Do you have a question?
Well, I kind of do, just sort of I'm curious. So the residential factor of 1, I understand that this is what we've typically had. The Board of Assessor recommends this. So keeping a level tax rate across the residential and commercial, with the exception of the means tested.
Right.
And I'm curious, do you know of any cases where towns have gone the other way, like lowered the commercial tax to try to encourage economic development?
Unfortunately, you can't.
You cannot. Okay.
Right.
That's okay.
It's, yeah.
Interesting.
And yeah,
Erase that.
as
Yeah.
great as that sounds and everything, unfortunately, you can't go in that type of direction.
I mean, we sort of effectively have that because of the means tested. We effectively have the dual rate, but we cannot go further in that direction.
Exactly, yeah.
No. Thank you.
And you can only go up to a factor of 1.5
1.5.
if you did split it eventually.
Yeah.
So, and the state recommends, all our training that we just did,
Yeah.
that you have a commercial base of at least 20% before you can consider a split rate, because the burden is too high on the businesses. So like right now, if you did like a 1.1, you would save, like the average house would save maybe under $100,
Under 100.
where the average business would probably go about 1,500.
Yeah.
So it's not
And
enough.
right now, there's just shy of 10.5% commercial, industrial, personal property in the town.
You said the recommended percentage is 20, once a town reaches 20% of commercial.
That's when you can look at it.
Yeah.
That's a minimum.
Yeah, that's the recommended.
Even at that
Right.
point, they say,
But
really
until
look
you,
at it.
but until you get this, I'm not saying you have to, but the minimum you can consider would be
Right.
That's where the impact will come closer. It's not
Yeah.
so skewed.
I think last year we even discussed 25 as sort of that threshold.
Yeah.
21, 20 being the minimum, but 25 might be a more realistic.
It may be, and, you know, and it's looking at, you know, what is that makeup of commercial and industrial properties that are in the town? Is it, you know, are we getting more of the large warehouses type of buildings and businesses in the town? And, you know, if that were to happen, you might want to look at maybe doing a split tax rate, because you have these very large, like the Amazon warehouse type of deals. If you had, you know, a couple or three of warehouses like that. I'm wishful thinking, I mean.
And once you got there, I mean, neither one of us will probably be here, but
Oh,
have the
probably,
assessor at that
yeah.
time come up with a chart that shows you what each percentage do, 1.1 to 1.5. So then you can determine if it's worth it or not, right?
But the big takeaway from this is we're not close to that.
No, it'd be horrible for businesses.
Which are mostly small businesses.
Yeah.
Primarily, yeah.
All right, is there any other discussion? Then I would move to close the public hearing with the Board of Assessors.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? All right, meeting closed. We have to do all four of those, correct? All right, so I would, we can. All right, so I would move to set the residential and commercial tax rate shift as a factor of 1, as well as not accept the open space exemption, to not accept the residential exception, and to not accept the small commercial exception.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Motion passes. Thank you so much for all your time and
very
expertise.
much.
We really appreciate it.
Maybe.
Very clear presentation, so thank you.
Very much.
Almost made it on time for 6:50. But I am going to continue the public hearing for Vandervalk Farm at 6:53 p.m. And then as an abutter, I am going to recuse myself and hand the chair over to Mr. Goddard to handle this next section of the meeting.
Okay. Should I read the notice again, or are you good to go?
I think it would be belt and suspenders to read the, yeah.
All right, the Mendon Select Board will continue a public hearing on Wednesday, November 5th, 2025 at 6:53 p.m. in the Upper Town Hall located at 20 Main Street, Mendon, Mass. to consider the application for Vandervalk Farm for a farmer brewery pouring permit, Farmer Series winery pouring permit, and application for 19H Farmer Series pouring permit located at 18 Level Street, Mendon, Mass. 01756 under Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 12. All interested parties are invited to attend and be given an opportunity to be heard. Now, having said that, since we're continuing, I thought maybe we should recap where we left off, then we'll open it up for further discussion. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
And Jeremy, I'm going to ask for your assistance in this because I think there's at least two things, maybe two flavors of things we're looking for. We're looking for opinion from our town council on the zoning questions that were raised in the last meeting in terms of the applicability of this business in that space. We also had an ask from a public safety perspective to look at the Level Road in general. Also consider parking at the new establishment, although that's a zoning question. I think we did reach out to building inspector there. So I don't know if we can get updates in those three areas, and then we can open up for discussion.
Yeah, so three things, zoning, parking, and public safety. So I'll start with zoning. So we have an opinion from town council, which has been circulated to the board, that the activities posited on this pouring license, the Farmer Series Winery and Brewery, are considered agritourism, which is consistent with Mendon's right to farm bylaw. So we have the written opinion from town council on that, that zoning wise, it's not an issue. On the parking, so Mendon's parking bylaws under section 2.03, the table there. This is a restaurant and other places serving food or beverages, and they need one space for each 5 seats plus one space for each 5 employees. So there is not a clear guidance on what standing room and outside seating and outside space requires for parking. So that's up to interpretation of the building commissioner. But before a certificate of occupancy would be issued for the space, the building commissioner would need to receive a site plan for parking, which the Vanderbilt provided me earlier this week. And I transmitted that over to the building commissioner. So before a certificate of occupancy would be issued, they would need to ensure that there is sufficient parking for the occupancy there. So that's on that side.
Just to generate a point of clarification then, so we're looking at pouring permits, the building inspector's certificate of occupancies, and these are mutually exclusive.
You can grant a pouring permit, and if they don't get a certificate of occupancy, they could pour to nobody who could be there, right? Exactly. So it's a both and. Both of these need to happen for the business enterprise to go ahead, but the consideration of parking spots per patron is in someone else's purview.
So what this board often does for say different permits, we might say contingent upon. It's by rule, it's contingent upon. So if we were to make a decision at some point, we don't need to make it contingent because it has to happen. Is that fair?
So on that one, I have a recommendation to make it contingent upon something else, but on the parking, yeah, that needs to happen from another entity with another process before they can have folks patronize their establishment. So those two seem pretty cut and dry for me. The third question was to have public safety input. So I met with police, fire, and highway talking about traffic and the road itself. So a couple of things. One, currently there exists these same pouring permits at 25 Level Street. So on the other side of the street, I was about to say the left side, but it depends where you're coming from. On the other side of the street. So right now that pouring permit involves the outside area, seating areas, and then as the applicant came for a change in description of the premises previously to include their loft event space. The applicant had stated earlier that their intent was to no longer have the retail on the ground or the on-site pouring permit or on-site pouring operations outside of the event space, and to move all of that over to 18 from 25. I think that's important in that this is not an attempt to double the operation. It's to move the operation from one side to the other. I think it would be prudent of the board to ask for a change in the description of premise for the 25 Level Street pouring permit to say, pour just at the loft event space and not on the ground, and then have all of that pouring permit activity happen at 18 Level Street. I think we should talk to the applicant about that. Additionally, there's not an emergency plan on file with either police or fire for 18 Level Street, which essentially says, how does police and fire get in there to access exactly? Does the apparatus, does fire apparatus fit? Police apparatus is less controversial. If they're SUVs, they can get any other car can get. But to make sure that fire apparatus can move in there. So on request of the fire chief, we recommended that approval be contingent upon a police and fire approved emergency plan, which is something I communicated to the applicant earlier. Everyone recognizes that the road is narrow and windy. It's the nature of the road. So highway, I don't John Dudley is still on. So highway will explore feasibility of some roadway improvements in terms of widening and installation of some speed bumps in conjunction with the rest of public safety. This is not a overall commitment to widen the roadway or do this. They are exploring those things. It's pretty difficult in some spaces because of built environment, because of natural environment, and ledge. Yeah, exactly. Highway has also posited putting a painted crosswalk between the two, between 25 and 18 level. As part of the parking arrangement and agreement, folks patronizing 18 level will be directed to park on that side of the street. So we, in normal circumstances, don't anticipate patrons walking between the two properties, but we may have staff or may occasionally have patrons walking between them. And it's the opinion of public safety that such a painted crosswalk would serve as an alert to drivers more so than patrons and have be a key for drivers to slow down, and there may be pedestrians in the area. And then lastly, and I think this should be an agenda item posted separately from this public hearing, and then it'd be discussed later, but I want to discuss it here at the public hearing as it applies to the topic. At 2017 annual town meeting, the town accepted MGL Chapter 90, Section 17C, which allows for speed limits as low as 25 miles per hour in thickly settled residential areas, which Level Street is considered. And right now there is an implied speed limit of 30 miles an hour. So the MGL allows the select board to vote to make a posted speed limit lower than 30 miles an hour. So it's the recommendation from public safety writ large to have select board vote to reduce the speed limit to 25 miles per hour and instruct highway to install related signage. So right now there's, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but there's not posted signage of a speed limit there. So this would be, we talk about.
There is a.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where?
By your corner.
At Millville.
As you come over around, it's 30.
Yeah, when you turn on Millville Road, before you go around the corner.
Oh, right on the beginning of the road, yeah.
On Blackstone Street.
Right where you should be going 30, it says 30.
Yeah.
So what this recommendation would be is to reduce the speed limit to 25 and instruct highway to post conspicuous signage that relates to it. When we talk about traffic calming, there's three E's of traffic calming: engineering, enforcement, and education. So this would be kind of the education piece of it, where you instruct folks that the expectation is 25 miles an hour.
So I think it makes sense to sort of move some of this. I would say these ideas around level road safety are separate and distinct from necessarily the question in front of us. Because I've heard feedback from residents on that road saying, do something about the traffic on our road. So you're saying we can talk about it, but action will be in maybe in the December meeting.
Yeah. So I think the two things related to the crosswalks and then the speed limit should be their own agenda items that happen after. The reason I talk about the description of premise for the 25 level permit is a recognition that this is not, like I said, this is not a doubling of activity. This is a shifting of activity. So I think that can be a direction given by the board in this public hearing, whereas the other two are changes to the environment on Level Street that would be reasonably discussed absent any pouring permit application.
Thank you. So in my mind, there's three areas. One, the parking question was an item that Jeremy touched on. The description of activity and premises is a second item, and then zoning. Our opinion from council on zoning within, is the third item. What I'd suggest or like to ask is, does anybody who would like to have any questions on the parking description or situation that Jeremy just described? Any questions on that particular topic people want to raise? And I'm going to go through three of them, and then I'm just going to open up. So whatever anybody wants to say, you'll have a chance to say it. The description of premise, I guess I would ask actually Vanderwalks to maybe to step, because this is a,
Can I come up?
yeah, no, absolutely, because
Great.
this is,
I do have some comments to say about the description of premise.
yeah, because so as it stands today, you know, it's an existing business on that road. So some of the items that we're talking about, we have to look at real time and say, are there issues? How can we improve the situation for residents, et cetera? So it's an existing business. The last time we met, it was stated that the expectation is a lot of the outdoor activity permits would be done over at the new establishment 18. No commitment was made.
Correct.
So I think what I heard, Jeremy, is we're looking at it saying we might want to be more specific in that space. So
Sure.
want
Would
to
you
get
both
your,
introduce yourself? For the-
Yeah. Lisa Vandervalk. Do you want me to say where I live?
The applicant.
28 Level Street. Say your name.
Casey Vandervalk, 25 Level Street.
Okay, great. Now we're official. All right, so yeah, it is our intent to move like the main winery operation across the street to 18 Level Street. They wouldn't be open at the same time. It's not our plan at all, although we don't want to necessarily say we're never going to pour wine at 25 Level Street ever again. We do have all of our blueberry bushes there. People come in the summertime to pick blueberries and enjoy a glass of our blueberry wine. Blueberry wine's kind of our thing. So in that situation, you know, we would want to be able to sell wine, you know, during that time. Also, we have a Christmas tree operation, so we would want to be able to sell wine at 25 Level Street during Christmas tree time. It makes sense to kind of sell the wine where the customers are instead of, oh, you'd have to like go across the street. I also want to point out that there's clear guidance on this that comes from the ABCC, and it basically just says that when you issue the license, it's not just for the licensed premise, but it's for all of the vineyards and all of the farmland as well. And I'll pass that over to Jeremy. I didn't know this was going to come up today, but it just says, basically, it can be sold on any of its premises licensed under said section 19 B, C, and E, and on the grounds of the farm operated as appurtenant and contiguous to and in conjunction with such premises, provided that these premises are operated appurtenant and contiguous to each other.
where I'm going, I need to understand what the
Yeah.
council said. Because I'd say if that were the case, why do we have
Why do
this
we even
hearing?
need to have this? Yeah.
Right.
Agreed. Well, that is one of the things that came up for us, because like we do have a separate license at the state level for the manufacturing of the wine, but so it's like, it's unclear.
I would like to continue the discussion to clarify and answer any questions people have regardless of what this
Sure.
is. But I'm going to suggest that we need to go back to council on that particular point.
Yeah,
And say, what are we doing here?
My understanding was that pouring license was for the farm.
Correct.
So whether the farm, and as the two properties have merged into one, after a period of time, they're owned, and the farm is both sides.
Right.
So why is there a need for a second license?
So I would like to suggest we table that question because I think we're all in violent agreement on we need to clarify that point.
Yep.
The need for a second pouring license. But let's just say by chance we need two pouring licenses. I
Yeah.
say we continue this exercise and we'll keep coming back for discussion.
Blueberry Festival would be open.
Oh, yeah, sure. Or like our annual blueberry festival that we have, you know, people come pick blueberries, music, markets, the whole thing. It's,
So that would be on the 25 Level Street end for that event.
so there's like a few specific instances.
But, you know, all the picnic tables are being moved over to 18, everything's being moved to 18.
So as I understand it, the weekend, regular weekend activity, with possibly the live music,
Yeah.
would be occurring at 18.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
It will be.
the preponderance of visitors that are going to be drinking wine will occur at 18.
Yeah,
But there will be event-driven scenarios, much like the new
Yes.
building.
yeah,
It's going to occur at 25.
yeah,
Yes.
And that doesn't eliminate the question of, that actually supports the idea that there will be potentially increase in activity at certain periods on both sides of the street. Is that fair?
I don't think so, like, cause Christmas trees.
You know, it's hard to say I don't think so when you absolutely, yeah, possible. You,
Yes, it's possible.
unless you were to commit to say 18 will be closed for having an event at 25.
Sure.
But I'm not hearing you say that.
I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm
So-
saying we've always been,
You know,
we've proven ourselves to be responsible business
Understood.
owners.
Understood. I just want to be very clear to anybody watching this to say, okay, we can't say there won't be an increase. There's the potential.
Sure.
And the idea is that you want the flexibility to run both sides at the same time on those occasions.
Yeah,
Fair.
great. We agree.
Yeah, no, I just want to clarify because I think there will be, if I were to say there's going to be no increase in activity because you're already running a business, somebody else who's a different opinion could make the case that that's not the case.
Yeah, understood.
Okay, so description of premises, we have something we've got to research.
Yeah.
We've clarified that, what Jeremy was suggesting is that the expectation from the applicant is that they want the ability to run both sides at the same time. Everybody agree with that? That's how I hear it. Any other questions from anyone or any input on the idea of the description of the premises of 18 versus 25? Then I want to move on to zoning. Our town council's weighed in. I said in the last meeting, I personally am going to defer to our town council for legal opinion because legal is interpretation. And we pay town council to give us a good interpretation. So is there any other questions or thoughts on the question of zoning, the applicability, having these wineries running in this area, this zone? I don't see any hands. Is it specific to the zoning question? Yes. Come on up. Thank you.
Good evening, Attorney Henry Needham, 1013 Level Street. In regards to zoning, if you could just repeat the town council's understanding of what they believe the zoning, because I know and understanding with the situation here is that we're in a residential zoning area. Now, because of the nature of the farm lot, the use of as a farm is allowed there, and that's fine. But we all do know, I do note that this was zoning happened in the 70s and the farm lot is separate from that. But with the zoning is in purpose for appropriate locations for uses. And Lovell Road, as we know, and I don't mean to get into that early on. I think that should this be deemed a farm or farm activity, then the argument could be made that yes, it's an appropriate area. So I just want to note that the zoning is for a restaurant bar activity, unless it is absolutely attached to the farm lot, it would not be properly zoned. So I just wanted to just put that on the record as far as I would be in agreement with town council in regards to that.
Okay.
So town council said specifically, chapter 29 of the Mendon bylaws, the Mendon right to farm bylaw, section 1 states the bylaws to encourage the pursuit of agriculture, promote agricultural-based economic opportunities, and protect farmland within the town by allowing agricultural uses and related activities. And then section 2, farming includes conducting agricultural-related education and farm-based recreational activities, including agritourism. And then section 3, right to farm, states the benefits of the bylaw are applied to commercial, agricultural, and farming operations and activities performed by a farmer on a farm conducted in accordance with generally accepted principles. So given the purpose of the general laws and establishing the license, the restrictions limiting sales produced of products are consistent. It's my opinion that it's consistent with the farmer brewery farmer, winery, and brewery are consistent with agritourism.
So I think this is where we're wading into interpretation now. We have town council's interpretation of, and Sarah, do you have any added response to that, or we can capture your interpretation?
Sir, I think that it's important to know that 18 Level Street was owned by the Kaplans. Mr. and Mrs. Kaplan lived there since the 70s. Mr. Kaplan passed away, and Mrs. Kaplan sold the property to the Vanderbilks. So why I bring that up is because this is not a historic farm. And I would note that in the applications of the ABCC, as far as when the zoning was brought up and mentioned in the application, is this a commercial zone, or is this not in the residential zone?
So we talked to ABCC today, and the so the fact that the application with ABCC was listed as commercial is an issue with the ABCC, which the applicant will have to rectify. But in terms of the local licensing authority approval of a pouring permit, the specifications on the ABCC application relative to zoning.
That's understood, and that would be under the reading of the town council that this license is allowed to be issued under section 12. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And section 12 is where the town council is deriving this local licensing authority to issue said farmer series pouring permit. Is that correct?
I don't think so. Town council is saying that it's an allowed economic activity under chapter 29 of the town bylaws.
Or I apologize, I might be cutting to a different issue, but as far as the notice for this hearing goes, is pursuant to 19B, 19C, and 19H pouring permits. Why do I mention that? Because at the end of it, pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 138, Section 12, is what the town posted. Section 12 is for common victualers and exclusive, and actually mentions that series 18 and 19 license holders do not and cannot qualify for a license under that section.
I just want to ask a question. If we don't make a decision in this hearing, we would have to repost and vote under it properly. If what you're saying is fair.
And
Is that fair?
yes, and I appreciate that, and I'm not trying to, I understand that.
No. If you are in fact correct, I'm glad you pointed that out, because we're going to continue anyway to do what Aaron Box is on board. So, but thank you.
Yeah, with the super big asterisk that I'm not an attorney. As I understood, section 12 explained to me that that's where we can do the local licensing authority, and it's how we've previously. So section 12 includes language that says the local licensing authority may grant a license for the sale of alcoholic beverages, or the sale of wine and might, any locations, yada yada, that it seems prior, that it seems proper. So 19, the section 19 is under the purview of ABCC. And as I understand section 12, that's what's under the purview of the local licensing authority.
So I understand where that reading comes from, and I can see that. But I would note that the language of section 12 specifically does speak to no person or form shall be granted a license under provision of section 18 or 19. The question is, well, how is the town supposed to do that? And in July 11 of 2013, during the Governor Baker's administration, that's when they created the Farmer Series pouring license. And so at the time, this was a new pouring permit for farmers, wineries, farmers, distilleries. Previously, these types of establishments were licensed as pouring permits under MGL Chapter 138, Section 12, Paragraph 7. So previously in time, the authority that the local licensing authority was issued to give these pouring permits was Section 12. But with the adoption of this, the actual authority under these applications for 19 would come from subsections within them. So in dealing with 138.19C, that goes to subsection 19CN as the last paragraph of that one, in addition to the 19B.
It is I want to make sure I'm tracking here. What you're suggesting is the posting to the meeting referenced the wrong sections for us to take the action we're taking. Is that that's the gist?
That very well may be.
No, that's fair, but I guess the point would then be, it's not that we don't have the authority to do what we're talking about. We just got to make sure that the administrative side of hosting it properly, we should dot i's, cross t's for our next meeting, because this will be continued. Is that?
That's part of it. And that's an excellent point. The other part I bring that up is because that there is specific language within the Farmer Series B, 19B and C, and also H, which goes into the criteria and the considerations for which the local licensing authority is to consider to make their determination. And it's in writing and all that. And I'm not trying to tell anyone how to perform their duties. I just wanted to at least make the community aware that through my reading of it, I believe that these would be the considerations under section 19CN, 19BN, and also under 19H.
Okay.
Yeah, I apologize for going off topic.
No, that's not off topic. I
And
am also not aware, so this is very helpful.
so in somewhat tied into the variance issue is the matter of contiguous and appertenant. We've also spoken a little bit about whether the operation is going to be on one side or one's going to be on the other. And part of the language and the requirements from 19H, excuse me. Or excuse me, so the section N of 19B is essentially notwithstanding section 17, that basically is about quotas. But a local licensing authority, subject to the approval of the commission, may grant a license to sell wine for consumption on the premises of a location that is deemed reasonable and proper and approved in writing on the grounds of a farmer winery licensed under this section and on the grounds of a vineyard operated as appertenant and contiguous to and in conjunction with the farmer winery.
So are you questioning the contiguous?
Yes.
So I don't have the reference right here. We have had it previously, and I can find it. Parcels owned by the same, by the same owner, separated solely by a public way, are considered to be contiguous.
I understand that argument, but the only thing that I can think of or issue I see in this is in the actual investigation recommendation of the investigator for both these, the 19B and the 19C. Per the report of Mr. Brian Gould, special investigator, he reviewed the application. In the first paragraph on either of these, he specifically states, Susan Vanderbalk, DBA Vanderbalk Farms, for a 19B license to be located at 18 Level Street, Mendon. Susan Vanderbalk owns a winery brewery across the street by the same name at 25 Level Street, Mendon. The premises are not, he wrote contagious in one of these, and the other one, he wrote contiguous.
Who's this individual? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is the recommendation of the investigator or the investigator from the ABCC.
Can I ask, what's the date of that?
7/7/25 and
Brian Gould is the
5/14.
investigator that came out to approve the manufacturing facility at both 25 and 18 Level Street. He did the investigation on both of those sites, and that is why we thought we needed a second pouring license, was because the state required us to get a separate manufacturing license because it was across the street. But if you look at the farming 61, it clearly talks about, farmlands being, contiguous, even if they're separated by a road.
Can I ask another question? Sure. What was the date that you purchased the property, the new property across the street?
March of 23.
Could
you please state your name?
Susan Vanderbalk.
So in March of 2023, you purchased it.
Yes.
My understanding and talking previously is that they would remain contiguous until the property had been owned by you, worked by a farm for at least 2 years. And after 2 years, which would have been March of 25, they couldn't be defined legally as not contiguous any longer. So that's the point, because I asked that point before. So again, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just telling you I've been given different information that the investigator, and I was a special investigator, I can tell you that they are, in fact, or at least I, in fact, from time to time made wrong decisions or wrong recommendations. I'm not saying he is, but his recommendation seems to be in contrast with the law, from what my understanding.
I would agree, an investigation, or the recommendation was for licenses on both. And I would, if I may correct the record very quickly, Mr. Gould was the investigator, was on 7/7/25, where he prepared this report, which was after the March date. Special investigator John David was the first one, or is the first report in regards, that's the 19B license.
And when did he do that?
That was May 14, 2025.
Still,
That was for the winery, 19B.
Pardon.
Brian Gould did the investigation for the brewery. There was a different investigator for the winery.
Regardless of who, when, what, and why, we probably want to clarify contiguous
sure.
definition. Based because the state has said it's not contiguous. So, once again, I don't know the answers. I just want to make sure we capture all the questions so I can clarify these points. So we've got, do we need 2 pouring licenses? Is one takeaway I've heard. We need to define contiguous as it pertains to the investigations and the ABCC interpretations.
And how it pertains to a farm.
Because they are directly across the street.
Correct.
I would assume that they are taking the farm aspect of it into, because this is specifically a farmer's series winery or purpose.
And we can't be too, we're gonna cross all the Ts and dot all the.
No.
And then we want to clarify in terms of town council opinion, section 19 versus section 12.
What needs to be referenced in the public hearing notice? Yep.
Other points you'd like to bring?
I just wanted, part of the concern about the section where the local licensing authority, I just wanted to just make note to follow up with town council regarding the criteria laid out in 19B, 19C sections, and for both of those, because everyone spends a lot of time here working on this. I'd hate to see some technicality, something cause undue delay in trying to resolve this.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for letting me.
Anything else?
The only other thing I would like to mention is regarding the traffic. I think it's not the Vandervalk's fault that there's more traffic. I think that conditions on that road have changed. I think that I've been saying this for a long time now, but it's soon enough we're going to be considered Metro West. Okay, housing prices are getting crazy. People are moving in here, and the towns are getting packed. So I think that over time, not their fault or anything to do with the Vandervalks. I think that the business is great over there in the location, but I think that because of that road, I think people are using it as a cut through. I apologize. Go ahead.
No. All I wanted to just add some context to this, that when one of the folks who was a resident on Lovell Street, Fred Kelly, was on this road 30 years ago when I was a cop, and Lovell Street was a dirt road. He actually put an article, or the board put an article on the warrant to actually straighten and widen and improve Lovell Street. And the residents of Lovell Street said they didn't want it. They said they wanted it to stay as a dirt road, and they wanted it to stay narrow and winding because it would slow people down and stop them from doing a cut through. So ultimately, they convinced people at town meeting not to improve the road, even though Fred Kelly was of the mind that, we're going to be Metro West someday and it's going to grow, and, we can't stay a town of 700 people. So after the people voted it down, they still found the money to at least pave the road. But there has been sentiment for decades to widen, straighten, and improve that road along all the roads. So your point is well taken, but we've been trying for decades to do this. So
one last note on that, if I may. I would just like to extend the offer. My client is that if appropriations of funds, if a traffic study was found to be appropriate by the town and it was a matter of funds, my client would loan the money to conduct the traffic study. It is just a dangerous little road. It goes, you can truly travel on that road 15 miles safely without feeling like you're gonna get in an accident. And I mean, I drove down there for the first time the other day myself, and there was someone walking. At a maximum, it can be about 18 feet, and that's including the gravel and being a little generous. So back to the zoning thing, the farm is there, that's fine, but it's a tough road because the road is not intended for such activity and for the current travel that we're seeing today. So I'm not saying it's the Vandervalk's fault or anything. That's not what I'm saying at all. They've done a nice job with their business over there. But I think it's a matter, the concern is for the neighborhood, because I got anxious driving down there myself, and I can't imagine, I'd hate to see a situation where something tragic happens or someone leaving the place, not in any kind of intoxicated state, but just because it's just kind of dangerous. So that'd be my concern. I just want to extend that offer to the town. Should that be something they would like to pursue?
I have a question, Chief Kersey. Is there any provisions within the laws of the Commonwealth that if the local authority found that a lower speed limit would be appropriate? Is there any provision for that we can do that?
That's all we voted, it was 25. Anything lower has to be conducted by the DOT. It's not even an independent study, it has to be the DOT.
So the DOT, so there is a possibility that if the DOT wanted it, they could designate it as a 20 or a 15.
They would have to accept the road, they would add to their list, and then they would have to do the process. But I mean, you get on the list and I mean,
Which is doubtful.
Look how long it took to do
Right.
16. We've been working on this since 2016. And they're just gonna start in the spring.
When you say the DOT has to do it, what are they doing?
They would do it, their own independent traffic count study. It wouldn't be basically, they would look at the street, examine it, then they would do a traffic count study. There'd be 2 boxes on each side of the road with a strip that goes across. They leave it there for
We
weeks.
would just have to get in queue to have them do that.
To get that done.
Would there be a way for us to get a special permit or special law through to get the legislature to take it up to make a special vote?
Can I make a suggestion, just real quick, because I think we're veering into those topics that we said should be another meeting. But I think this is a good topic to have in our next meeting, because these are things we should probably be considering regardless of whether or not the winery expands or not. From what, this is based on other residents raising their hand. I think at one of our meetings, we said, we should look at traffic on level, and everybody to a person raised their hand and said, yes, audibly. So,
Just thought with that, the legislation that they gave us was the law we adopted in 2017, to go down to 25. So that's the special legislation they gave us, and we adopted it.
Okay.
so we can reduce it to that level. Anything further with
Okay,
DOT.
yes.
Correct. Okay. Any other comments from folks at the table?
You can make it a one-way.
No. That's a public safety hazard.
You know what? To
You
be
could make
honest with you.
You
that
could make
would
it a dead
actually-
end.
That would actually make it worse. Because people who know there's a one-way, and they know it's a one-way, they know nobody's supposed to be coming the other way. so
Oh, I
they
see.
take care
Then
of
they
it.
go really
So
fast.
making a
One
one-way
way.
would not be a solution to that, it would actually make it.
Think public safety, they're on Inman Hill and they get a call at the zoo. They have to go all the way around Main Street, up Miller Road, to Cincinnati.
It's
We're-
not.
We're going way off topic here.
Yeah, that, like,
But one thing I did want to say, I would be remiss in not pointing out that, I think safety we've talked about zoning, this, that, and the other. But the select board received a letter this week, focused on the traffic study and safety and things of that nature. So I just want to make sure that's recognized, because I think it's fair, but I also think there are things we can do outside of mutually exclusive from the pouring permits to look at this, and I think we should. I think we agreed we'll have that on a follow-up agenda. It sounds like DOT might be in a position to do a study. Would there be a cost to us if we were to jump into queue there?
I'll talk to the highway surveyor. He would probably have to initiate it and I can work with him.
But it would be, third party,
Yeah, they do that.
professional, and
Well, it's a state, that's a third party, it's a state that does it.
Right.
Well,
Well, it's not,
after the
Not
stuff.
us.
yeah, it's not us. So that's a third party. But the point being, it may not be, it might take some time, but I think there's a number of things we can look at between now going forward to improve the situation from a safety perspective. And I'd like to recommend that we do that.
The only dangerous thing with the DOT though,
Is there a chance it goes up?
it could go up.
But we can keep it
No.
at 25.
Not with those birds With those hills.
Again, the way it's monitored is different. The average speed.
It's a topic for another meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether we do that. So, Freddie, you can,
That was my point.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Opening it up, any other comments, questions? Sir?
Who pays for the repairs of the road? Taxpayers pay it? This is something that, pull the permit. 'Cause I built like 2 or 3 big buildings. Every time I have to, so what?
Come on up.
I always have to pay for all the utilities myself when I do any building.
We're gonna have to ask name and address and all that.
Like
good stuff.
15 Love Street, how do you? Who pays for the repairs of the road if they decide to make it wider? Is it on the taxpayers' bill?
Any public way would be that way. Any repairs that the town would do to any of the
To
public.
accommodate a
roads.
business?
It doesn't matter, they pay it. Now, if we had a dual tax rate, we pay them over, we have a single tax rate. So all the taxpayers pay, and we get money from the state, from chapter 90, and we actually get additional monies to do that, and we'd have to put it in the queue. But any repairs, public safety would be just like it was
That's not
30 years ago.
That's an accommodation.
Yeah, so I just want to bring it back. So I would guess this, that I don't know, but I'm guessing if we had to tear up a road to put something, sewage or something, that may be part of a project that the private entity is doing. If we're widening the road for safety reasons, because regardless of pouring permit, that would be borne by the town.
I understand, but in this case, it's really accommodating a business. It's not really doing, we would have done this a long time ago, like he said, 30 years ago.
Well, we tried to do it
I know.
30 years ago.
Okay.
So towns, we voted it down.
Hold on, remember that. One at a time, Mike, and let's kind of funnel it through me, because it's my one chance to have it funnel through me. I hear you. I would probably say, I do want to look at level separate from this question on pouring permits. Because I think for instance, if we put speed bumps in, I think that might be a good idea. If we're gonna put in a 25-mile-per-hour traffic speed limit sign, we're not gonna ask, because it was sourced from this discussion, I'm not gonna go to the business owner and say, you need to fund traffic signs. I think that's.
Anytime that I've done it, I built 2 or 3 big buildings where I had to put my own stuff in because the town wouldn't pay for it. Because I was opening a business just like they're trying to do. I don't know what is the.
Well, the only difference is the type of things and we'll talk about it at our next meeting, funding, whether we do things or not. That to me is a safety consideration for well-traveled roads.
Which I understand that.
And depending on the extent of the change.
Unique situation we're having here. This is
Mr. Chairman,
very.
can I comment? I would argue it's not unique. It's unique that that road is a safety hazard. It's been a safety hazard for 30 years. It was a safety hazard when it was a dirt road. It was a safety hazard before that became a farm. It was a safety hazard, frankly, even when it was a dirt road. So all of those issues, while they slowed down the traffic, it's not the fault of the farmers there now that it's still unsafe. They should have done it. We should have done it, frankly, 30 years ago. But you know what? Every person has a voice. Everybody in town gets a vote. And it went before the townspeople, and the townspeople said no.
I remember, I think we voted no on it. I think everybody on the street said no.
Right. So it may be time, and as was well pointed out, we're gonna be Metro West before long. Route 16 used to be a narrower road.
I
And it just, things change, and it's growing pains.
So as we sit here today, the point you bring up on funding, that's going to be a separate discussion, right? So right now, what I see is for this hearing going forward, we want clarification on the need for 2 pouring permits. We want to understand and get definitive definition of whether the contiguous definition as it pertains to 18 and 25.
Yep. And
make sure we point out the ABCC might have put something in writing that indicates it's not. So we want clarification on that. We want to understand from, I'm recommending we're continuing this hearing. So when we post it again, we will be posting it under referencing section 19 verses 12, or clarification on that.
Yep.
That to me is the scope for the next hearing. We're going to follow up on the safety of traversing level road and a separate meeting, but taking that off, take an offshoot there, right?
Yeah, agnostic to any commercial activity on the street.
Right.
This is the discussion the select board wants to have.
Yeah.
Based upon the nature of the street as it exists, not with any perceived additions or changes.
So that's how I see it scoped, separate, any other,
Zoning as well, you said.
yeah, the zoning might fall into that contiguous question. We have a definition on zoning.
There's always been residential on that property for a long time.
Right, and I think we have an opinion, so I think we have information that we can use, and we are open to hearing gets back to legal interpretation, right?
Oh, just one quick
Sure.
comment. Couple things. One is it is contiguous and it's been decided already several times. It's come up in our argument over the new parking lot, agreement on that. All of that was considered contiguous. But even if it is not, it has enough land. It's got its own licenses, okay, and it could stand on its own, okay, without being contiguous. So again, like we have our licenses.
To that point, if it were not contiguous, we would need 2 licenses, is my guess. Is that fair? Or do you say no?
Well, if they weren't
My-
contiguous, I don't think they both be
Let's-
considered a farm.
Well, I just wanted to say.
Yes, they would both be considered a farm. That's what I'm saying.
Is 18 under chapter, is 18 level chapter land? Is it under 61?
It is now, yes.
Yeah.
So we
That's fine.
get the question on 1 license for both or 2 licenses
Yeah.
needed. We get contiguous, that's all.
It's all
parts of the same
together.
question. So I think we want to get clarity from our town council. We also want to make sure she's understands what the state has said. Because if the state in writing has said it's not contiguous, right or wrong, when they did it.
Well,
We just want to make sure she has seen everything that has been brought to our attention.
for sure. And so you know this better than me, but so the federal license was basically like, when we went for the federal license through the TTB, it was basically, we added the address onto our existing license.
On an existing
The
farm.
state was like, no, you need a new license for the different address. So there's not a lot.
No.
I know you're looking for clarity. I hope you find some because we also.
We
would
are
love
going to
some
navigate
clarity.
the bureaucracy to come to a point where.
I
we're
love it.
comfortable in making an informed decision.
We would
But
love
it's
that.
all legal interpretation. We're going to need to decide amongst ourselves based on our town council's input, what interpretation we're going to go with, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I'm summing it up. Are we good with that?
I'm 100% with you.
Any other comments, questions? Otherwise, I'm going to recommend we continue this to one of the 17th.
I was gonna say, give me some time to work with council rather
Yeah.
than try to put us on a 2-week with Thanksgiving in between.
Yeah.
So 17th.
Second December meeting.
17.
You want to do it then, or you just want to do it into the new year?
We wanted,
I know, but.
We
we're
wanna
gonna
do-
get, just knowing that the time of year it is, and that the different parties, we have to,
Can I make a suggestion? Can we say the 17th, Mike, and we just,
sure.
can we post it for a later date if town council says I need time?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we did between.
We're just giving verbal notification that we think the 17th is the target.
And if we
we'd love to get it in this year if we could.
And if we think the MGL reference needs to be changed in the public hearing notice, and we post a brand new public hearing notice, that will require additional notification to abutters because it's a new notice. So I'd like to get clarity on that. And we're supposed to do a 2-week notice. So doing it on the 3rd doesn't really give us 2 weeks. The 17th is the earliest.
And hell, Christmas Eve if we need to, right? Everybody's good with that.
I wouldn't want to ruin the holiday.
That was a joke.
Take your time. I think that's the best idea. Check it all out. Thank you for your time.
All right. So do we need to do a motion to continue?
The chair can just announce we continue.
Well, we're continuing. All right. Excellent.
To the 17th.
Good job.
Done. Right back to you, Jason.
Can I have my paper back?
Nice job, Mr. Goddard.
Right. I forgot this wasn't my favorite.
Oh, you took notes on it?
I would have your notes.
It's just my to-do list, so you
Oh my God.
feel free to help.
Just hard.
I'll send it to you.
I got it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
you.
Have a good one.
Joe.
Yeah, this is, these are repeat questions. They get free though.
Have a good night.
Challenging your ability to read law, and I love it.
You should.
You sound like a lawyer. You did that well.
All right. Town administrator's report.
Sure.
It's on that paper, go get it.
So first, I just wanted to acknowledge debrief from special town meeting. I thought a lot of it went really well. I've gotten a little bit of feedback from residents and some elected officials about stuff to improve upon going forward. One of which is during the consent agenda, to read the actual motions of each article on the consent agenda and give a little more space for people to understand what it is that's being added to the consent agenda and an ability to hold, which I think is a great idea. We're already accelerating the agenda and the time of meeting, so making sure that folks understand what it is that's being put in there. I think is a good idea. Also, I need to do a little bit better job of explaining what a bill of the prior year is and why it's important that we pay it. Because
That was a little heart-stopping moment there.
yeah, and looking back at my explanation and saying it's National Grid's fault, we have to pay this is probably not the best selling of it. So do that a little bit better. But at the same time, making sure we all understand what the reconsideration tools of town meeting are. Should we, if you are on the winning side of an article, you can bring it up for reconsideration later. But I thought it went well, and happy that we were able to appropriate so much and invest so much while still maintaining free cash for annual town meeting. Accounting is setting up our principal accountant is on vacation this week, but setting up all of the town meeting article funds so folks can go ahead and expend that money pretty quickly. An update on, what is it, 106 Millville Road, the illegal kennel and animal activity on Millville Road. I don't want to say residents, the people who are there living there they said they'd be out by the 1st of November, and now have said they'd be out by the end of this week, and apparently transporting animals today and later this week. So I spoke with Board of Health. So we'll have an update again at the end of this week and beginning of next week as to if that actually materialized or not. Chief, I know you're not at the table, but has there been any other criminal kind of activity or law enforcement activity from your department relative to that address?
There has, I probably can send an email out about it. There was some arrest warrants issued and
Okay.
some things that happened in Blackstone at the kennel over there.
So just my point wasn't to necessarily have you divulge all the specifics, but just that we're kind of taking it from both angles.
There's additional things happening between Blackstone and us, so go out and know.
I had a meeting with MURSD superintendent this week. They will likely be looking for an operational override. They're over $2 million in the hole as they look at it right now. Kind of in November, a 40-something million budget, $2 million isn't insurmountable, and that's not a given. But I think they'll be asking for something. I'm going to ask the superintendent to come and talk to this board about that ahead of any formal budget discussions, just to set expectations and get everybody to understand what the school is looking for and why. Second to that, I haven't talked to anyone at BVT, but I want to ask them to do something similar. Anthony Steele, the superintendent's been to other constituent communities, select boards to talk about what fiscal 27 budget requests will look like. and talk about what lottery enrollment means for the district. So I'd like to get him here to talk to the board. I think he's a pretty good communicator in my limited interaction with him. So I think we'll do a nice job. Cultural council member, chairs, I'm not sure of her role, Joanne Lamothe was here to talk about 4th of July celebrations next year and what that, as the 250th, what we can do here. So that we've got an original reproduction of the Declaration of Independence here in the town clerk's office. And so either a reading or a ceremony, a signing or something like that. So I have cultural council working with the town clerk to do something like that. And we'll chat about that. Had a meeting today on the tax rate recap. So it's always an interesting kind of song and dance between who wants to take responsibility for taxes in towns. So select board presents a budget to town meeting, and then town meeting approves the budget. And that's essentially what keys off what the tax rate is going to be. And then the Board of Assessors sets the tax rate. So town meeting sets what the need is, and then the Board of Assessors sets the tax rate to be able to fulfill that need through the tax rate recapitulation process, which involves the town clerk entering votes, certification of votes, the assessors, all sorts of values, the treasurer in terms of debt exclusion, and then the accountant for everything else that goes into it. And then I get to I don't actually do anything. I just get to make sure everyone else does all the things they're supposed to do. So we had that meeting today, and we're pretty far along and anticipate being able to submit mid next week before Thanksgiving. So that's kind of always DOR's goal, is to make sure we have it in before Thanksgiving, because there's a big rush in early December once folks come back, and then that takes longer for your tax rate to get certified. And just for everyone's edification, we need to have tax bills postmarked by December 31st. So in order to do, you kind of go from there and then work backwards. So getting a tax rate submitted before Thanksgiving is an important piece of that. We're in good shape.
Cool.
I'm at an MMMA conference in Worcester tomorrow and Friday, so I won't be in the office. Katie talked about Willowbrook for the town holiday party on the 19th from 5:30 to 8:30. So as we finalize that, we will communicate and get that out. Before that, I have 2 future agenda items, but I talked about this early on, and lots of other towns do it, but we are hell or high water going to issue town quarterly newsletters. And we're going to start in calendar year Q1, so February, we're going to go in the middle of the quarter, and get a town newsletter out, and how it's distributed and what it kind of looks like and all that kind of thing is a work in progress. But we'll have an introduction from myself and the chair. We'll have department highlights, elected board highlights, FAQs, FAQs with the town clerk and the town treasurer and board of health and that kind of thing. And then employee spotlights, not to put Isabella on the spot, but what is a conservation agent? What do they do? And we'll rotate it. It won't be Isabella every quarter. But and then like a list of important dates. So not necessarily events, what's going on at the senior center or the library, or whatever, not that, but like tax bills are due, registration, voter registration deadline, those sorts of things, and make sure we communicate that out. So Katie's been working on some templates on how it looks. Jen's been going on some examples. We've tried to find interns from both BBT and NITMUC and have had little success. So we'll take it on. But I think it'll be there's without a robust, newspaper and news operation, getting information to constituents is often difficult. So we're gonna try this route for a little bit. And then 2 future agenda items. So in the Association of Town Finance Committees interpretation of Mass General Law, absent any sort of bylaw or ordinance to the contrary, the responsibility to create and present a budget to town meeting falls to Finance Committee. I say it like that because that's their interpretation of their responsibilities. So it is, I believe Finance Committee will be taking up motion at whatever they tend to vote or meet next to say the town administrator shall submit and prepare an annual budget for the town. It is my anticipation that they'll ask for select board to have a similar vote because we don't have a bylaw that says that. The bylaw, the town administrator bylaw that I presented here that I looking for your feedback on for the December 17th meeting, and then I will take to the general bylaw review committee, says the town administrator is responsible for presenting to the select board a balanced budget. But that won't go into effect until after, should it go into effect at all? Would not go into effect until after the fiscal 27 budget's already presented.
Can you repeat that? What are we doing?
Which part?
So,
Just, why?
so voting that the town administrator is responsible for presenting the budget rather than finance committee.
Because currently it is the FinCom.
So MGL says absent any other.
It's the
vote.
lack of a law
Right.
that has it fall back on them is the interpretation.
So I guess absent this vote, either I do it anyway, or I do it and give it to FinCom and then they present it. Like if FinCom is a bunch of volunteers who have their own jobs, like they're not going to sit and prepare a budget.
What do we need?
Well, that's why we would always have.
Yeah.
But
And from a job description to do the work.
we discussed this years ago, and that's the reason for the hearing. Because that was the MGL was always interpreted that the finance committee had to hold a public hearing when they would present the budget. But that's the way that we interpreted it, that however it got put together to them. Right. They were the ones that had to present it to the town. And that's how that was.
That was public hearing.
Interpreted, public hearing.
Right. So does this mean they don't have to do a public hearing?
We actually don't do a public hearing on the budget. We, this past year, we've had.
Well, we were supposed to.
We've had, we actually, so I asked council this because a couple of folks have asked me, like, when do we do the public hearing? So as council, I said, you are not required to do a public hearing.
Well, that's not what town council used to say.
I believe that.
I'm just telling you that the way that law was, because the discussion was, well, what is our responsibility exactly?
So this is the whole point.
I might even
We're
know.
just gonna declare the responsibility is Jeremy until we get it written into law, and then we want.
Well, again, my argument was, because we talked about this then, was the FinCom's responsibility under that law was satisfied by having a public hearing when they presented it to townspeople, because it went through them.
Do you need to excuse yourself?
No. Drinking bubbly water. I put that to burp on my. Yeah, I think this is just providing some clarity rather than allowing multiple interpretations. If both boards, if the board and the committee say, we both think this, then it.
If it seems pedantic, it is, and
Yeah.
that's just sometimes, I guess, how it is.
And
It's growing pains.
my anticipation is this vote that I'm at, well, that FinCom's asking, it's not coming from me. This vote that FinCom is asking will be moot in a year. That's what I have. The other future agenda item, recently we raised the building permit fees and consolidated some and changed some. And the building commissioner has sent a memo requesting increases for inspection fees for the inspectors. Have been raised, and it says in the memo, I don't have it here, but it's been sagging for a while. So I'll present that from the building inspector at a future date. That's all I got.
Any, sorry to bring up any progress in Plain Street intersection wire relocation?
It's literally the thing I crossed out on here because I wanted to update you all on it. Plain Street paving. So there's John Snow now. So I had it on here because and I have a couple of emails out but didn't get a response.
Okay, that's fair.
They finished Gaskill though. They finished Thornton.
Yes.
Well,
I think they were both supposed
I know you can see it's down on the Providence Street side. I don't know if they made it all the way through, but it looked like it was done.
All right.
Yes, I just got,
There was some utility up there. Main Street too.
yeah, I think that had to do with water.
All right, so fee structure is gonna be on the December 17th meeting. Parks Commissioner appointment.
Yeah, waiting for the Parks Commission to confirm a date for me.
Okay,
Do we have an agenda item coming up where we're gonna have a telecom representative telling us about the process for how to get wires?
Yes, yep, so that's one of the things where I sent an email in, so.
that's right, that's
Yep.
why I didn't make it on this
100%,
one.
yep.
Hopefully sometime in December if they get back to us.
Cemetery group.
That's something we've been attempting to schedule. I haven't made any progress since the last meeting on it. It's on my radar, but I haven't got anywhere.
All right, so personnel policy review is gonna be the next meeting, so. Jen, do you have anything to add?
I thought it was the 17th or the 3rd.
It's gonna be the 3rd.
Okay. No, but the only addition that will be presented would be the bereavement leave policy that we can.
Yeah, we just needed an afternoon to dedicate to that.
All right, so,
You'll send out the update after the meeting.
bring your comments. And then,
Question.
Yep.
Bring our comments or send our comments beforehand?
Beforehand would
That would
probably,
be great,
yeah,
but if you don't have them before that, we can.
Right, but if we have comment, like what, to update a document before that meeting, when would you want comments by, based on what we already have?
the Monday before.
Okay, cool.
And then the bereavement piece that Jen and that we're talking about is we want to make sure we square all of the various bereavement policies. So that's just an exercise that takes time. It's not super. I don't think it's super controversial. So that's not what's going to hinge on your approval of the.
all right, and then we'll do the bylaw discussion on the 17th. And that's about it for this month. Does anybody else have anything else? We got the cemetery, we got the Plain Street, we got MURSD. So there'll be some robust discussions in December.
Yeah, we'll also have at least one highway appointment at the next meeting, which is exciting.
Great. All right, so our next meetings are December the 3rd and December the 17th, 2025. And number 11 would be executive session. So let me read that out. I move that we enter into executive session pursuant to Purpose 3 of the Open Meeting Law to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with unions, and Purpose 2 to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or contracts with non-union personnel. Jeremy Stull, Town Administrator, as conducting this discussion in open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Board will not return to open session after the executive session solely for the purpose of adjourning, and will adjourn from executive session.
Second.
Any discussion? So this will be a roll call vote. All those in favor, Cooter, aye.
Chanel, aye.
Burgos, aye.
Morale, aye.
Right, motion passes. Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody, and we will see you in December, meeting adjourned after the executive session. I will not hit the button, my bad. It's on autopilot now. Have a great night.